Hey guys, thanks for joining me here today. My name's Ken Stouffer, and I am the owner of Solano Speed Shop. And yeah, there's actually a reason why it's still called Solano Speed Shop instead of something else that's related to guitars. A good friend of mine, who's no longer with us, somebody I admire very much, is the one who developed the logo and everything for Solano Speed Shop back in the racing days. So he was also my co-driver at Pikes Peak. So there's no way I could let the logo go. So I just decided to go ahead and keep it. I'm going to use it here and start putting it on guitar headstocks. It'll be a lot of fun. So anyway, I didn't shoot a lot of video during the build. I'm just not really good at that kind of thing. So most of what you're going to see here is just stills with me doing a voiceover in the background, and I'll walk you guys through how I built the guitar. Not going to be a lot of teaching going on here because I'm a hobbyist. I'm an amateur at best, but I do enjoy it. I enjoy the process, and was excited to join the Great Guitar Build Off this year to meet a lot of new folks and see a lot of really great builds and just be a part of the community. So follow along with me here over the next several minutes, and I'll show you how I went through this build process. I think it came out really great. I'm really happy with it. Of course, there's a thousand things I hate about it, and there's always going to be, but I did my best, and I'll have a lot of things that I can apply to the next builds coming up, and I already do have a few that pipeline. So excited to show those off later on this fall and over the winter. So thanks again for joining me here, guys, and I hope you guys like this.
So for the neck, I wanted to do everything in maple, so I chose a light flame maple for the majority of the body. The inlays, of course, are going to be done with that roasted flame maple, and then I used a dark flame maple for the fretboard, and I did a natural flame maple. Some of the offcuts that I had, I used those for the block inlay. The only part on the guitar actually that's not maple is the Purple Heart rib that I use going up the neck that you can see there. That splits the maple from the roasted maple. So for the truss rod, I used a Bitterroot Guitars truss rod. I like the quality on them so far, and they seem to fit really good. And I haven't had any issues with them as far as stability in this neck or a couple other necks that I've got that I've built since and that I'm using them in. So really like those, and looking forward to how they'll do here. The carbon fiber rods that I use in this neck, they are a little bit shorter than I would have liked, but they're what I had. So, but I still get pretty good coverage all the way from the nut down to where the neck meets the body. So I feel like it's pretty well supported. The block inlay that I did was a lot of fun, but it was also a challenge. I'd only tried it once before. I take that back. I tried it and practiced it a couple times before and got pretty decent results. Enough confidence to go ahead and take this on. And I did make a mistake, which you can see there in the block. You can see that I accidentally nicked that edge of it. And I was able to repair it pretty good, and it hides pretty well. And honestly, after it's stained, you can't really see it all that much. So I used a router to hog out most of the material here, and then I got after it with hand tools and had chisels and cleaned out the rest of the waste. For the block inlay, I used some offcuts of the maple. I actually had a strip that was long enough, and what I did, and nobody will ever notice it, but what I did was I cut out the pieces along the length of the board that I took it from so that they'd all end up in the same place that they came out of, if that makes any sense. You can kind of see it from the picture there. So that as you look up the board, the flame maple and the grain within the maple is consistent as you go from block to block because that's where they lived in the original piece of wood. So anyway, it was dumb. Nobody's ever going to notice it. It was kind of a time waste, but it was fun to do nonetheless. So I went ahead and did it. Did a 10-inch radius on the fretboard, which is really comfortable. I have a Rickenbacker that I play most of the time, and I like that 10-degree radius, so that's what I stuck with here. And I think it came out really good. I'm excited to see what you guys have to say about it. But yeah, first time I'd really tried a block inlay like that, and it was a challenge, but a lot of fun to try and learn, and I'm looking forward to giving it a go again. So when it came time to carve the neck, I'm not gonna lie, I slow plated a bit. This was only the second neck I'd ever tried carving, and the first one was a guitar neck. So this was the first base neck I'd ever tried, and it was also the first multi-piece neck I had ever built or tried to do. So I had no idea what I was in for. Like a lot of you, I use this faceted method of cutting the shoulders off. I prefer rasps and files. I don't have a spoke shave, and I don't tend to lean towards those kinds of tools for this operation. I really like using rasps and files, and I have a couple of Iwasaki files that I really like, and of course a Shinto rasp that just makes quick work out of a lot of this. So I tend to gravitate those towards those tools for doing these. You can probably see I left a pretty decent shoulder on the neck there, and that's the way I prefer it. I like a little bit of beef in there. I don't like a lot of thickness along the length, so I ended up going with below the fretboard about 5/8 all the way consistently down the neck. So and really like the way that feels. So kind of stick with that. But it seems to work out really nice. It's very comfortable to play, and I think it came out really good. So I had a bit of an accident in the area right behind the nut. So when I was fitting the nut and working on a few things back there, it wasn't as I was trying to fit the nut that it blew out, but that was definitely part of the process. A couple of things happened. I noticed a crack, and just decided to go ahead and carve it away completely and rebuild it. So I took a small block of the dark roasted maple and glued it on, let that sit for 24 hours, and then proceeded to carve away everything that didn't look like that area behind the nut. And it seems to be holding up really well. I got good adhesion with the glue. It cleaned up really well with the finish on. It's almost seamless. You can just see a little bit of a parting line there, but it's not obtrusive. It doesn't look really terrible. So all in all, it felt like a nice save. Those last couple shots you see here are the block that I made for the truss rod access. The big hole that was left there before just was really unsightly, so I made this little block that slipped in there, hole drilled in it so that the truss rod wrench fits in, and I think it looks a lot nicer. These next photos are just a few shots of the tuner installation, so you can see how the trim rings and how the tuning machines themselves went in. I used maple for the body, both the main part of the body and the top. I have a piece of veneer that's in between those two, and it's reconstituted hardwood, I guess is what they actually call it, but it's a purple veneer. And originally I was going to keep this natural, so that purple was going to kind of stand out against the very bright white of the maple, but ended up staining it after all, so you don't quite get the same flavor there with that purple veneer, but I still think it looks good. So as I mentioned before, I am a big fan of that first generation P bass from Fender, so I did want to kind of pay tribute to the look of that bass, which is why I decided to use a traditional P bass pickguard shape, but I knew I didn't want it to just be laying there on top of the body, so I decided to use a piece of roasted maple and inlay it into the body. To me, it seemed like that would be a lot more fun way to do it. You'd still get the look of that classic P-bass pickguard, but it would be laid into the body and nice and smooth, and of course done on a nice piece of wood instead of a piece of black plastic. And I think it came out pretty good. I used a bit of glue and some dust in the areas where I wasn't able to get the inlay to lay in as tight as I wanted. I mean, it's the first time I've ever tried anything like this before, so I knew it wasn't going to be perfect, and it certainly isn't, but I thought it came out okay, and there's a few imperfections still in that seam, but I think that that's okay. It still lets you know that it's a separate piece from the body and not just a stain put on top. Here's a shot of the electronics covers. The front cover is actually glued in. I have a couple of screws in there to make it look like it's a bolt-on cover, but it's actually glued in, and you access everything from the back. For the finish, I started out with a crimson water-based red, and then I sanded that way back and went over top of that with yellow. And I really wanted to bring out either like that kind of reddish brown or even a little bit more red than brown kind of highlights in there and in the figure of the maple. I thought it really complemented the yellow quite a bit, and I thought it did look like a sunflower to me. So I thought it was pretty nice looking. And then for the pick guard, I just put some black over top of that, then sanded most of that back as well. I left it a little bit heavier on the edge. Wanted to make sure you still had a good idea of where the edge was and give it a little bit of contrast there. So it wasn't just the brown going right up against the yellow. You'd have a nice contrast with a little bit of darker brown and black there right against the yellow. For the clear coat, it was just a handful of coats of clear nitrocellulose lacquer, and I let that cure for a couple weeks before I sanded it back and buffed it out. So hey everybody, we'll go ahead and take a look at the completed base, and don't mind the white legs, all right? Just ignore all that. So starting at the back here, it's a Wilkinson bridge, and I used bronze saddles that I found rather than the steel chrome ones that came with it. I think that they look nice. Set of Rotosound strings, 45 to 105. Used a Switchcraft quarter-inch output jack. The knobs are chrome pearloid dome tops that I got from StewMac. And there really is a difference on these ones that you get from StewMac versus ones you might find on Amazon. Just the smoothness of the transition from the pearloid to the chrome is really, really nice on these. It always seems like the ones I saw from other sources never really smoothly transition, don't feel all that great. Anyway, CTS pots, and let's see, did a Sullivan P51 pickup. I really like the way it sounds. Good thump to it. I believe it's got a slightly higher output than stock 51P bass pickup, but not by much. And of course here you get a good look at the inlay and the finished figure on the bass as well. So I've still got a little bit of buffing and polishing to do after having played it for a couple of weeks. So I'll get it all cleaned up and everything. So the neck, like I say, it's a multi-piece maple with the Purple Heart rib going through it. And I'm really very excited about how this came out. As you can see here, the shoulders, I left a little bit of shoulder on this, so it's a little bit more round in your hand, but the way I tapered it beyond 90 degrees so that it curves back into the fretboard feels really comfortable. So I really enjoy playing it. It's one of my favorite ones to play. I've got a nice little arsenal of basses. I'm really lucky to say that, but this has already become one of my favorites. I just really enjoy it. It's very smooth. Action is right where it should be. 664s on the bass side, 564s on the treble side, and neck relief was able to get it really, really close without having to make much of an adjustment. So it's holding together really well, and the carbon rods are doing their job and keeping it nice and stable. Just bone nut. One of the first I'd ever done, so I was excited to go through that process, and it wasn't without its mistakes, but I think it came out pretty good. Got it polished up, and it resonates really nicely, so I must have done something reasonably right there. Tuning knobs are Fender Highway 1 tuners. They're a little heavy, but they do the job nicely, and they're consistent. I found over a couple of weeks I wasn't really coming out of tune very much, if at all. And that's about it. Just a chrome button for the string tree, and yeah, like I say, I'm really happy with the way it came out. I hope you guys like it as well. I'd be playing it for you, but I have a horrible fright of playing in front of anybody, so that's mostly an endeavor I do while I'm by myself. So maybe one day I'll get the confidence and get the ability enough to where I feel comfortable playing in front of a camera, but you're just gonna have to trust me. It sounds pretty good. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and hope to see a few of you comment on it, and I'm excited to see all your builds as well, and looking forward to finding my favorite to vote for. So hope you guys have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you all again soon.